Acoustic properties of materials. Now that we know that sound within a space can be made up of direct sound coming from the source to the listener location and also sound reflected off the inner surfaces of a space, it is important to consider the three categories of materials that are found within buildings. First of all, we have hard and reflective surface finishes. And these are quite intuitive. They feel physically hard and reflective. They are used to provide intentional reflections of sound and to redirect sound in a particular direction. The opposite of a hard reflective material is a sound absorptive material. So this can be a soft material or it can be materials that can actually flex. It removes sound energy from the room. What it is doing is converting sound energy into heat via frictional interaction within the pores of the material. Materials that can flex provide low frequency absorption, and it involves the conversion of sound energy into movement. The third category are diffusive surface finishes, or surfaces that scatter sound. In this case, sound is redirected in random directions, whereas a hard reflective surface might reflect sound in a certain direction. Diffusive sound finishes scatter sound randomly in all directions. They are typified by irregular or numerical sequence generated surfaces, and they are commonly used in performance spaces. Let's look at those three categories of materials within spaces. Some surfaces reflect sound, for example, concrete, brick, and plastered surfaces. Different shaped reflective surfaces can redirect it in a certain way. On the left-hand side there, a flat surface will give rise to specular reflections of sound. You might remember from your high school physics that the angle of incidence equals angle of reflection off a flat surface. If you have a concave surface finish, the angle of reflection is focused to a point. So you can get hot and cold spots within a space if you have a ceiling or wall shapes that are shaped in a concave way. The focal point of those reflections of sound are the center of the radius of curvature of that concave surface. The opposite of a concave surface is a convex surface, in which the reflected sound is reflected evenly in all directions through the convex surface finish. And the last category is a corner reflector, which is used to redirect sound back in the direction that it came from. Here's an example of a ceiling in a speech auditorium that was developed by an architect. It has a combination of concave surfaces in this area here, and a convex surface finish in this area here. As you can see, there's a loudspeaker at this end of the room, and this is the same end of the room as where the speaker would be speaking at a lectern. So you can imagine that there could be some problematic reflections of sound, particularly from the concave surface finish here, where the focal point could be back at the speaker's location, causing distraction to that speaker, hearing a late reflection of their own voice. So in this situation, the plywood panels were actually perforated and lined behind with acoustically absorptive material to prevent that concave surface finish providing focused reflections back towards the speaker area. Moving on from reflective surface finishes, some surfaces absorb sound. The ones you can readily think of would be mineral wool, cloth drapes in cinemas, fabric panels, and also you might not think of perforated metal. So perforated metal, which has sufficient open area, lined with an acoustic liner, such as mineral wool or polyester behind, can be an effective sound absorber, as well as having the appearance of a sound reflective material, particularly at large distances away. Some surfaces diffuse or scatter sound, as I mentioned before. In the old days, most performance spaces had a lot of plaster ornamental surface finishes, and this gave rise to a lot of natural diffusion within these performance spaces. And that is why they're considered to be some of the best performance spaces in the world, through that natural diffusive surface finishes. And light fittings were often used to provide diffusion as well. In modern performance spaces, modulated surfaces are used, or mathematically derived random sequences that provide different depths to the surface finish and provide that scattering effect. Diffusion or scattering can also be obtained through a coffered ceiling, and the different depths of different parts of the ceiling to provide diffusion at different sound frequencies. Here's an example of one of those performance spaces that has a natural diffusion through the architectural features in the space. You can see the balcony fronts have light fittings, which provide natural diffusion. The ceiling has very articulate plaster surface finishes that provide diffusion as well. On this case here, you can see in the audience chamber the coffered ceiling with different depths, which also provides sound scattering and diffusion. Here's an example of those modulated surface finishes I talked about before, where they are actually engineered to provide the diffusive surface finish. In this case here, it's a three-dimensional array of different depths of reflective materials that have been generated by a random number sequence. This is a three-dimensional version of what's called a diffuser. On the right-hand side here, we have a two-dimensional diffuser, which are slots of different depths. On the left-hand side here, we have an organically generated diffuser design based off fractal theory.